She was just taking a rest on the bus, until the passenger beside her revealed his secret. The midnight encounter, the weight of survival. The bus lurched forward through rain-slicked streets as Camila Torres pressed her forehead against the cold window. The clock on her phone mocked her with its glowing numbers. 11:47 p.m. Another 16-hour shift at Romano's Bistro had drained every ounce of energy from her body. Her feet throbbed inside her worn sneakers, her back screamed with pain, and her arms ached from carrying heavy trays all day. But none of that compared to the guilt gnawing at her insides as she looked down at baby Santiago, strapped to her chest in a faded carrier. His tiny face was scrunched up, red and angry, preparing for another round of crying. Camila could feel it building like a storm about to break. She whispered desperate prayers under her breath, hoping against hope that he would stay calm just for the next 20 minutes until they reached home. Santiago had other plans. His first whimper cut through the quiet bus like a knife, causing several passengers to turn their heads. Camila immediately began bouncing gently, making soft, shushing sounds, but it was too late. The whimper became a wail, then transformed into full-throated screaming that filled every corner of the vehicle. "Jesus Christ!" a voice muttered from somewhere behind her. Camilla's cheeks burned with shame. She knew what they were all thinking. Bad mother, inconsiderate, couldn't even control her own baby. The familiar weight of judgment pressed down on her shoulders, making her want to disappear completely. She tried everything she could think of, rocking, singing, offering her finger to suck on. Nothing worked. Santiago's cries only grew louder, more desperate, echoing off the metal walls of the bus. The stranger's kindness. "Lady, you need to do something about that kid," the bus driver, Bruno, called out gruffly from the front. "You're disrupting everyone's ride." Tears stung Camilla's eyes. "I'm trying," she called back, her voice cracking. "He's just tired and hungry. I'm doing my best." "Well, your best isn't good enough," a woman in a business suit snapped, not even bothering to look up from her phone. "Some of us have important meetings tomorrow and need to rest." Camila wanted to scream back that she had important things too, that she had to be up in 5 hours to start another shift, that she was doing this all alone with no help, no support, no one to share the burden. But she swallowed the words, choking on her pride and exhaustion. That was when she heard a different voice, gentle and warm, cutting through Santiago's cries. "Excuse me, miss. I wonder if I might be of some help." Camila turned to find a man sitting across the aisle from her. He looked to be in his early 30s, with kind hazel eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. His dark brown hair was slightly disheveled, and he wore an expensive-looking navy peacoat over a crisp white shirt. Everything about him spoke of a life completely different from hers, yet there was no judgment in his gaze, only genuine concern. "I don't think anyone can help right now," Camila admitted, her voice barely audible over Santiago's screaming. "He gets like this sometimes when he's overstimulated." The stranger stood and moved to sit in the empty seat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "My name is Ethan Walker. I have 3 younger siblings and spent my college years helping my mother raise them. I've dealt with my fair share of inconsolable babies. Would you trust me to try?" Camila hesitated. Every news story she had ever heard about trusting strangers flashed through her mind. But something in Ethan's eyes, something genuine and safe, made her nod slowly. "Camila Torres, and this is Santiago." "Hello, Santiago," Ethan said softly, extending his arms. "Let's see if we can't help you feel better, little man." The miracle. With trembling hands, Camila carefully transferred her son from the carrier into Ethan's waiting arms. She held her breath, expecting Santiago's cries to intensify at being held by a stranger. Instead, something miraculous happened. Ethan cradled Santiago against his chest with practiced ease, one hand supporting the baby's head while the other patted his back in a steady rhythm. He began to hum a melody, something low and soothing, that seemed to vibrate through his chest. Santiago's cries faltered, becoming confused whimpers. Ethan started swaying gently, a subtle rocking motion that matched the rhythm of the bus's movement. Within 2 minutes, Santiago's cries had completely stopped. Within 5, his eyes were drooping. By the time 7 minutes had passed, the baby was fast asleep, his tiny fist curled against Ethan's shirt, his rosebud mouth slightly open. Camilla stared in absolute disbelief. "How did you do that? I've been trying for 40 minutes. Ethan smiled, continuing his gentle swaying. "Sometimes. Babies just need a different energy. You've been stressed and exhausted all day, and he can feel that tension in your body. I came to him fresh, calm, with no expectations. Plus, the deeper voice and different heartbeat rhythm can be soothing for them." For the first time all day, Camilla felt her own body begin to relax. The knot in her shoulders started to loosen. The tension in her jaw eased. She watched Ethan hold her son with such natural tenderness, and something inside her chest felt like it was breaking open. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what this means to me." "You're doing an incredible job," Ethan replied, his voice equally soft so as not to wake Santiago. "I can see how hard you're working, how much you love him." Tears finally spilled down Camilla's cheeks. When was the last time someone had acknowledged her effort? When was the last time anyone had seen her struggle and offered help instead of criticism? Unexpected, comfort Mrs. Hawthorne, an elderly woman sitting nearby who had been watching the whole exchange, smiled warmly. "You're a blessing, young man. Not many people these days would step up like that." Ethan simply nodded, his focus remaining on the sleeping baby in his arms. He glanced at Camilla and noticed how her eyelids were drooping, how she was fighting to stay awake. "When did you last sleep?" he asked gently. Camilla tried to remember. "Really sleep? Maybe 3 days ago. Santiago has been teething and waking up every hour, and I've been pulling double shifts to cover rent." "Rest now," Ethan said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "I've got him. You're safe." Camilla wanted to protest, wanted to insist she was fine, but her body was shutting down whether she agreed or not. The combination of Santiago's peaceful sleep, Ethan's calming presence, and her own exhaustion was too powerful to resist. Her eyes closed almost against her will. The last thing she remembered before sleep claimed her was the feeling of her head coming to rest against something warm and solid. Ethan's shoulder. He smelled like cedar and rain, and for reasons she couldn't explain, she felt safer than she had in months. The observer Ethan sat perfectly still as Camilla slept against his shoulder, Santiago nestled in his arms. He studied her face in the dim bus lighting, noting every detail. The dark circles under her eyes that spoke of chronic exhaustion, the calluses on her hands from hard work, the way, even in sleep, a small furrow remained between her brows, as if worry had become her permanent expression. There was something about her that had caught his attention the very first time he had seen her on this bus route 3 weeks ago. She had been alone then, too, Santiago crying, passengers glaring, and Camilla Torres bearing it all with quiet dignity. He had wanted to help that night, but had been too uncertain, too afraid of overstepping. Tonight, he couldn't stay silent anymore. Bus rolled through the empty streets, its fluorescent lights casting everything in a surreal glow. Other passengers had returned to their phones and books, the crisis averted. But Ethan remained alert, protective of his 2 sleeping charges. He found himself unconsciously adjusting his position to make Camilla more comfortable, his arm shifting, slightly to provide better support for her head. Mrs. Hawthorne caught his eye again and mouthed, "You're a good man." Ethan wasn't so sure about that. He had his own secrets, his own complicated reasons for being on this bus every night instead of in a comfortable car with a driver. But looking down at Camilla's peaceful face and Santiago's tiny sleeping form, he felt something shift inside his chest. Something that had been locked away for a very long time was beginning to crack open. 23 minutes passed before the automated voice announced Camilla's stop. Ethan gently shook her shoulder. "Camilla, you're home." She jerked awake, immediately disoriented and embarrassed. "Oh, God, I fell asleep on you. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize," Ethan interrupted, carefully transferring Santiago back to her arms. The baby stirred but didn't wake. "You needed rest. There's no shame in that." Camilla gathered her things with shaky hands, trying to process what had just happened. A stranger had helped her, had cared for her child, had let her sleep without judgment or expectation of anything in return. It felt too good to be real. As she stood to exit the bus, she turned back to Ethan. "I don't know how to thank you. What you did tonight, it was—" "Take care of yourself," Ethan said simply, but his eyes held a depth of emotion that made her breath catch. "You're stronger than you know, Camilla Torres." The doors hissed open, and Camilla stepped out into the cool night air. She turned to wave goodbye, but Ethan was already watching her through the window, his expression thoughtful and intense. "Yulkinem." The bus pulled away. She stood on the sidewalk, Santiago warm against her chest, and felt the strangest sensation that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't yet understand. The secret revealed. The search 5 days after the bus encounter, Camilla still found herself thinking about Ethan Walker at the most random moments. While pouring coffee, while changing Santiago's diaper, while lying awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the water-stained ceiling of her apartment. She told herself it was just gratitude, nothing more. The man had helped her during a difficult moment. That was all. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. There had been something in his eyes, in the way he had held Santiago, in the gentleness of his voice that had touched a part of her she thought was dead, the part that still believed in kindness, in connection, in the possibility that not everyone would let her down. She was wiping down tables during the late lunch shift at Romano's Bistro when the bell above the entrance chimed. Camilla looked up automatically, her customer service smile already in place, and nearly dropped her cleaning rag. Ethan Walker stood in the doorway, looking somehow both out of place and perfectly at ease in the modest neighborhood diner. He wore dark jeans and a gray sweater that made his hazel eyes look almost green. His gaze swept the restaurant until it found her, and a slow smile spread across his face. "Hi," he said, approaching her table. "I hope this isn't weird, me showing up here." Camilla's heart was pounding so hard she was certain everyone in the restaurant could hear it. "How did you find me?" I asked around, Ethan admitted, looking slightly sheepish. "Showed your picture to a few people who regularly use that bus route. Someone mentioned you worked at Romano's. I hope that's not too creepy." "It's borderline," Camilla said, but she was smiling despite herself. "What are you doing here, Ethan?" He glanced around the busy diner, then back at her. "Is there somewhere we could talk privately? I have something important to discuss with you." The proposal, 15 minutes later, during her break, they sat in a quiet booth in the back corner. Camilla had poured them both coffee, her hands slightly unsteady as she tried to understand what was happening. "I haven't been completely honest with you," Ethan began, wrapping his hands around the warm mug. "Well, I haven't been dishonest either. I just haven't told you everything." Camilla felt her stomach tighten. Here it comes, she thought. The catch. The moment when the fairy tale turns into a nightmare. "Okay. I'm not just some guy who takes buses late at night because I like public transportation," Ethan continued. "I'm the founder and CEO of Walker Technologies. We develop software solutions for nonprofit organizations and social service agencies." Camilla blinked. "You're a CEO. Then why were you on that bus?" "Because I ride that route twice a week, late at night to remind myself of what matters," Ethan said simply. 5 years ago, I was homeless, living on the streets, sleeping on benches, begging for change. That bus route was my shelter on the coldest nights. Drivers like Bruno would let me sleep in the back as long as I didn't cause trouble. Camilla's entire perception shifted. You were homeless? For 3 years, Ethan confirmed. My parents died in a car accident when I was 19. I had 3 younger siblings to care for. We lost everything. The house, the savings. Everything went to medical bills and funeral costs. I tried to keep us together, but social services split us up anyway. I spiraled. Hard. He paused to take a sip of coffee, his eyes distant with memory. But I got lucky. A woman named Mrs. Hawthorne, actually the same lady who was on the bus. The other night, she ran a shelter. She saw something in me and helped me get back on my feet, helped me reunite with my siblings. She's the reason I started my company, to create tools that help people like her help people like I was. Camilla felt tears building in her eyes. That's incredible. I ride that bus to stay grounded, Ethan continued, to remember where I came from, to look for opportunities to pay forward what Mrs. Hawthorne did for me. And then I saw you. Me? You, Camilla, fighting so hard, carrying so much weight, never asking for help, never complaining, just surviving day after day with this beautiful determination that broke my heart. Camilla's voice came out as a whisper. Why are you telling me this? The offer. Ethan leaned forward, his expression intense. Because I want to offer you a job. My company needs a community outreach coordinator, someone who understands what it's like to struggle, to need help but be too proud to ask for it. Someone who can connect with the people we're trying to serve because they've walked that same path. Camilla shook her head in disbelief. Ethan, I'm a waitress. I never finished college. I have no experience in technology or nonprofit work. You have the most important experience, Ethan countered. You understand survival. You understand what it means to make impossible choices. You know what real people need because you're living it. That's worth more than any degree. I can't accept this, Camilla said, even as her heart screamed at her to say yes. It feels like charity. It's not charity if you earn it, Ethan replied firmly. This is a real position with real responsibilities. Salary, benefits, health insurance. For you and Santiago. Flexible hours so you can actually spend time with your son. I'm not offering this because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering it because I believe you'll be incredible at it. Before Camilla could respond, her phone buzzed violently on the table. She glanced at the screen and felt all the blood drain from her face. The emergency. What's wrong? Ethan asked. Immediately. It's the daycare, Camilla said, her voice tight with panic. Santiago's having trouble breathing. They called an ambulance. I need to get to Mercy Hospital right now. She was already standing, grabbing her purse, her hands shaking so badly she could barely function. Ethan stood with her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. My car's outside. Come on. They ran out of the restaurant, ignoring her manager's shouts about her shift not being over. Ethan's car was a modest sedan, not the luxury vehicle she might have expected from a CEO. He drove with focused precision, weaving through traffic while Camilla tried desperately to reach the hospital on her phone. He's going to be okay, Ethan said firmly, glancing at her tear-streaked face. Kids are resilient. Whatever this is, he's going to be fine. You don't know that, Camilla sobbed. He's all I have. If something happens to him, nothing is going to happen to him, Ethan interrupted, reaching over to squeeze her hand briefly, before returning it to the wheel. We're going to get there, and he's going to be fine. They arrived at Mercy Hospital in record time. Camilla bolted from the car before it fully stopped, running into the emergency room with Ethan close behind. A nurse directed them to the pediatric ward, where Dr. Ramos was examining Santiago. Mrs. Torres, the doctor said, looking up as Camilla burst into the room. Miss Torres, Camilla corrected automatically, her eyes locked on Santiago. He looked so small in the hospital bed, oxygen tubes in his nose, monitors beeping around him, but he was breathing. He was alive. Your son had a severe allergic reaction, Dr. Ramos explained. The daycare gave him some new food, and his throat began to swell. They administered his EpiPen immediately and called for help. He's stable now. Camilla sank into the chair beside Santiago's bed, taking his tiny hand in hers. I didn't know he had allergies. I've been introducing food slowly, but you couldn't have known, Dr. Ramos assured her. These things sometimes show up suddenly. The important thing is we know now and we can manage it. Ethan stood quietly in the corner, watching the scene unfold. When the doctor stepped out to handle paperwork, he approached Camilla gently. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Food? Camilla looked up at him, this near stranger who had driven her to the hospital without hesitation, who had stayed even though he didn't have to. Why are you still here? Because you shouldn't be alone, Ethan said simply. And because I care what happens to you and Santiago. The truth, over the next few hours, as Santiago slept peacefully with medication in his system, Camilla and Ethan talked, really talked. She told him about Santiago's father, Ricardo, who had promised forever and left the moment the pregnancy test came back positive. About her parents who had disowned her for getting pregnant out of wedlock. About the crushing loneliness of doing everything alone. Ethan listened to every word, never judging, never offering empty platitudes. When she finished, he shared more of his own story. The darkest moments of his homelessness. The shame of begging for food. The night he almost gave up completely. And the moment Mrs. Hawthorne found him and changed his life. I see myself in you, Ethan admitted as the hospital lights dimmed for evening. That same fierce determination to survive, to protect what matters most. But I also see something I didn't have back then. What's that? Hope. Despite everything you've been through, you still have hope. It's buried deep, but it's there. I can see it in the way you look at Santiago, in the way you keep fighting even when everything seems impossible. Camilla felt something crack open inside her chest. I'm scared, Ethan. I'm scared of accepting your job offer, scared of letting you into my life, scared of believing that things could actually get better because every time I've believed that before, I've been crushed. Ethan reached across and took her hand, his grip warm and steady. I can't promise that everything will be perfect. Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise that I won't abandon you. Not professionally, and not personally. Personally, Camilla whispered. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night on the bus, Ethan confessed. The way you carry yourself with such dignity despite everything. The love you have for your son. Your strength, your resilience. You're remarkable. Camilla, and I want the chance to know you better. To be part of your life if you'll let me. The beginning, Camilla looked down at their joined hands, then at Santiago sleeping peacefully in his hospital bed. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, good things could happen to her. That kindness wasn't always a trap, that some people meant what they said. Okay, she whispered. I'll take the job, and I'll give us a chance. But we do this slowly. No rushing, no grand gestures, just honest, real, getting to know each other. Ethan's face lit up with genuine joy. I can absolutely live with that. Dr. Ramos returned with discharge papers. Santiago would need to stay overnight for observation, but he was going to be fine. The hospital social worker had already arranged everything, though Camilla noticed Ethan quietly speaking with the billing department when he thought she wasn't looking. As night fell completely outside the hospital windows, Ethan settled into the uncomfortable chair beside Camilla. I'm not leaving you here alone all night. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. Ethan interrupted gently. I want to. They sat together in the soft glow of medical equipment, watching Santiago breathe peacefully. Camilla felt Ethan's hand find hers again in the darkness, and this time she held on tight. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges ahead, obstacles to overcome, and doubts to face. But for the first time since Santiago had been born, Camilla didn't feel like she was facing the world alone. She had found something precious and unexpected. A partner who saw her not as a burden, but as someone worth knowing, someone worth fighting for. As Santiago stirred and reached his tiny hand toward her, Camilla smiled through happy tears. This was the beginning of something new, something hopeful, something that felt like it might finally be her chance at a life beyond just surviving. Ethan squeezed her hand gently, and Camilla squeezed back, both of them understanding without words that they had found something rare and precious in each other. Not a fairy tale, not a rescue, but something better. A genuine connection built on shared understanding, mutual respect, and the courage to hope again. Outside the hospital window, the city lights twinkled like promises of tomorrow. And for the first time in a very long time, Camilla Torres believed that tomorrow might actually be beautiful.